What's up, guys?
Whoa, slow down, man.
Bringing us in quick.
Every time I don't even have my mic here. Catch me with my pants down, my podcast pants down.
I don't want to see that.
Wow.
Well, maybe some of you do.
Wink.
If you don't know what we're talking about, audio listeners, go over to youtube.com, type in the Dungeon Crawl Podcast. Boom.
I feel like, you ever have those days where you're just like, my own skin isn't comfortable?
Yeah.
It's like you just get, no matter which way you sit, move, or whatever, you're just like, I can't.
How often do you take showers? This might be a personal hygiene question, but.
You're here. You can smell me. Okay. Every single morning, sometimes twice a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I used to take them every other day. I read that was better for like your hair or something hygiene. But I've been feeling nasty every day. So
just take a shower.
Taking showers every day.
No, the reason I do it every day is because I am an oily man. And if you ever notice on the podcast, I am a shiny boy, which is why I mess with the lighting so often. And it's probably different every single podcast. Sorry about that. If you want to join us as a lighting professional, we won't pay you, but you can have experience
gaffers in here
and exposure. Get it?
But I have been working out more than the gym. We talked about that a couple of podcasts ago, but that might be why I'm feeling nastier.
Nastier because you've been working out?
Because I'm getting buff, and so I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm sweating.
Yeah. Oh, I see where you're going. All right. Okay.
It's a nice shower.
Yeah. What? I don't know if I want to steal your segue here.
Then when I'm showering.
God damn it.
It's like I'm taking a little short rest for the day.
A little short rest for the day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get your spell slots back?
I've actually been having issues with my long rests, my sleeps. I get in bed and I toss and turn for like 40 minutes. And it's weird. You start like paying attention to every little thing. Like I feel like my heart's racing and it just feels like, no, I'm just like noticing every little thing that my body does. And then my mind's racing and then I wake up the next day.
Yeah.
Just takes like half an hour for me to finally get there.
That's like halfway to a certain like mode of meditation, being so physically aware of every single portion of your body and like just the way your toenail tingles.
Well, I don't know if other DMs are like this, but what I do is I'll kind of go through those motions, but instead of going to the stage of meditation, I'll go to thinking about what I should do for my next D&D game. So I'll start thinking about lore and thinking about, we're getting ready for the Dungeon Chronicles to come back. So I'm thinking about different stuff that I can put into the game. I think about what I can do with my home game and everything like that. And then I end up just passing out and forgetting about everything I thought about.
Speaking of that, I on Twitter asked a couple of people just what they like to hear about and for like D&D and podcasts and whatnot. Yeah. And some of them say campaign diaries.
Yeah, Matt Colville did one for a while.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention like particularly about our home game. I've noticed like while we do have this is a hard topic to talk about, I guess, but everybody wants to be the star of their own show, I suppose, and has their one-liner that turns into like a paragraph, and everybody gives their it's like throwing ideals back and forth, and in anime they do it all the time, and like shows they do it all the time. So we're trying to mimic that, I feel. But lately, I've had a couple of thoughts in the game itself where I don't know, you've made a really ambiguous end goal for the final boss. I'm like, it's honestly.
Not too bad.
And since the others aren't here right now, we'll probably listen. I know two of our people listen. But it's like, if I can't save my brother who's drifting in the abyss, doing a world,
the void, close.
Same thing, same difference. If I can't save him, then resetting the world and making him not there anymore is like, there we go.
Making none of us here, yeah. That's fair.
I'm not like big considering it, especially since we haven't tried to save him yet. But another point of this is I am a warlock, and oftentimes I don't get short rests when I need them.
Yes. And
they need them to be fair. And I want to talk about that because he's the DM and he's Ryan.
He's Braxton, the player.
This is the Dungeon Crawl. Today we're going to talk about a topic that could get a little bit heated today.
Oh, okay. You ready to get heated?
Well, you run your games a certain way.
Well,
we've talked about this before, a lot.
So this topic came up because I saw a Reddit post a while back. I'm not referencing it because I didn't really pull too much from it, but it got me thinking about short rests and the philosophy of short rests. And the Reddit post is basically just pointing out how a lot of new D&D classes, or subclass, I should say, because the only new class we have is the Artificer. New races have long rest abilities, and the classes and races that had short rest abilities don't really have those anymore. They're kind of getting farther away from that. Mm-hmm. So the ones that have the short rest stuff are kind of left in the background.
Yes.
And so the monk and the warlock specifically are very centered around short rest stuff. And so some players could be like, well, I don't get any benefit from a short rest, so why would we take one when you're the one that benefits? None of us are really that hurt.
Yeah.
So this brought up the question of, is D&D, WotC, kind of moving away from the philosophy of short rest and kind of pushing more for long rests?
They're pushing for the proficiency bonus long rest
that too.
thing.
That too.
That's the big one we're seeing a lot of as of late. And it makes sense because it's something that scales with certain levels. Like it's a number that grows. So you're feeling that just progression, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I feel like when they first made D&D 5th edition,
There was no role playing.
Yeah, I think it was
just dungeon crawling.
Because if you go into the Dungeon Master's Guide and there's the section on how many encounters, we've talked this before, how many encounters should be in a day, it says like 6 to 8 encounters is in an adventuring day. Jesus. And it doesn't, to be fair, it doesn't just say those are like fighting encounters. These are conversations and RP and stuff like that. But there were definitely, a lot of people read that as in combat encounters, and that's a lot. Most people would not ever, I think, even if it's a combat heavy game, hit that unless you're in a dungeon. So I think they made the short rest classes and everything in the player's handbook with that philosophy in mind. And then they found out that that's a very small subset of the population, and not many people are even taking short rests, and most people are doing long rests. And so they're kind of pulling away from that ideal.
I know your answers for all of these things, but
Okay.
for posterity's sake, why
Sure.
do you think people aren't taking short rests anymore? The proverbial people.
The proverbial people. I don't know. I think there's a couple options.
Yes.
There's a few things. I read in this post that some DMs were just outright refusing players from taking short rests. And I think that's obviously a DM should not outright
You don't play
refuse.
Warlock with those people.
I think DMs
monk.
should never outright refuse anything. It should be more of a, well, okay, this is probably, stuff like that. I don't think it should ever be a refusal. I think for new players, it should be something you remind them of. You can take a rest. You don't need to take a rest, yada, yada. But I think specifically, I think it kind of... I think for the most part, I would say the most common reason, if we're to take a poll, the most common reason for people not taking short rests is because I think it's easy for people, DMs and players alike, to get into the mindset of, if I take a short rest, failure is happening.
Wrong.
Something's going to occur, and I'm going to miss out on the short rest.
I think that's only DMs. I do not think that's players. I think players will assume, much like how a lot of games nowadays give you rooms to rest, give you places to rest.
Well, one of our players in our game, she does not wish to take short rests because she thinks that something bad is going to happen.
She's got a lot of anxiety with stuff like that. So I feel like predisposed to this, which is very reasonable. A lot of things to be anxious about in D&D. But I do feel, and this is my opinion, so it could just be me and people who play.
That's why we have a podcast to share our opinions.
There's a lot of games and experiences nowadays that are just like, here's your Pokemon Center. You stop anytime you walk over. Here's this room in a dungeon. In many exploration games, Castlevania, Metroid,
stand on a bonfire.
There's just a spot for 2 seconds to recover your stuff. It's like given. So in D&D, when I started playing with you, and we would discuss like, bad things are going to happen if you take a short rest. I'm like, what? Okay, go ahead.
No, I think that's a very good point. And granted, I don't remember things I've said all the time. So if I've said that, I definitely apologize. I think I even wrote here in my notes, it shouldn't mean failure, but it should mean something will happen. That doesn't mean that, it means that the things are going to get moved forwards. It doesn't mean that you're going to miss out on something. It doesn't mean you're going to, the quest is over. Like you're going to take a rest and then like Skyrim going to pop up with like a line over your quest log. It means that, and I think also I wrote here, not all the time. It shouldn't happen 24/7.
Yes.
Then it means that every time I take a rest, something's going to happen.
Yeah, I've read,
continue.
That's exactly what I wanted to poke at too, is because I've read online when doing research for this, the DMs are like, something will happen. You know, the person they're trying to save will be harmed, a leg removed.
Yeah, DMs will, I think, definitely guilt the party, and the hostages will die. And like, this will happen. This could happen.
If they've earned this hour of rest and they like attempted to create a room that's safe, and maybe they really did like finish off a big thing to check off their list, it's like, okay, reasonably, if this hour goes by, is something going to happen? If the answer is no, or you rolled something that says nothing happened, DM, if you're doing like a random encounters thing, it's okay. It's okay to earn it. It's okay to give them a rest.
DM should outright say, even if the players are, considering it, should the DM say, it's okay, guys, nothing will happen. Just take your damn rest. Because I've seen
if they're not doing it, I've
seen sometimes you guys are like bickering and arguing, like, should we take a rest?
I'm always like, fuck it, do it.
And I'm like, and I want to jump in and say, guy, it's, nothing's gonna happen. Just take your rest. It's okay.
There's definitely stuff that you can do
slower.
You can say like, oh, like there doesn't appear to be as much rustling around. You don't hear the creaking of floorboards, people moving at time of night, time of day.
The only time I can objectively remember, and Braxton being a player in my game probably has a better memory of this than me. The only time I can objectively remember of something actually changing when you guys took a rest, granted you guys maybe have, this might be my only memory because maybe they've just never taken rests. But you guys had just done a large section of a pretty big dungeon and had pulled off to the side of one section of the dungeon. They're like, Jesus, we're pretty beat up. We're pretty hurt. And like, all right, let's take a rest. And so you kind of barricaded the doors. You went to like the far end and you just sat there and waited. And I think there was a very small, like a couple enemies attacking. You just killed them with ease pretty easily. I think actually something else happened. And you guys, like an item someone picked up started acting up. Either way, but nothing crazy. And so they got their rest in. Everything was fine. But then they went to the rest of the dungeon and it was very quiet. Everything seemed to have left. And then they went to the final room of the dungeon and all the creatures had got together to try to protect what they believed to be like their god, their deity.
That makes sense because we'd been killing people.
And they'd had their full rest, so they were full on with abilities and ready to fight this big
we did a long rest?
I can't remember.
Regardless of long, short rest, it's an hour.
And one character did die, I will say, but I don't think the player really cared about that character in the first place. So I think they were kind of tossing them into the abyss regardless.
Yeah. So in that case, what I'll pose right now is we were loud. We were altering things. Like it makes sense.
And if they noticed, the creatures are smart.
Yeah.
If it's a bunch of goblins, they probably won't.
Bunch of goblins, and we're all rogues, and we're disposing of the kills. Really, like if that happens, you probably
like some Hitman stuff, moving the bodies. And
so a short rest, like to me, an hour is like kind of a medium rest. I feel.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you: do you think a lot of people feel this way, DMs and players included, because they feel like an hour is too long?
It's a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Like genuinely. And I understand when DM's like, okay, it's an hour, you're in the dungeon and you're currently wrecking shop and they're going to know. So I do feel like it's a long time. And you probably ran across this too. A lot of posts online, Twitter and Reddit are like, yeah, I shortened it to 5 to, I've seen anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes.
Yeah. I wrote down here, the first thing I thought of was the first campaign of Critical Role, Matthew Mercer. I have not watched enough of Campaign 2 or Campaign 3 to remember if he still does this. But I know for a fact in Campaign 1, he changed the short rest to about 15 to 30 minutes.
In your games, I think you might need to do that.
I was thinking that I'm not opposed to that either.
Don't do it when I stop playing a warlock, I swear. I'll be a fighter, though.
But I think that does alleviate the concern that we're taking an hour out of our schedules. The big bad's going to get an hour in front of us, So I think that could have helped.
Yeah. And
the idea.
When that rule was created, was time even really that big of a mechanic? I'd say it's like giving up an hour in your day. We weren't observing time as much in like a dungeon delvey kind of not DM's Guild. I don't remember. Dungeon Crawl Classics.
No, it'd be more of a...
It's just like arbitrary. Yeah, it's an hour. Okay.
Well, it'd be more of you've cleared off this room of the dungeon, this level of the dungeon. All the creatures are either dead or have moved on, or you go back to town and that's where you rest. And I wanted to bring up too, I don't know if you've heard of the gritty realism rules, and this is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. There is, and that means a short rest is a long rest. So to do a short rest, you have to take a full night, and do a long rest, that's a week of rest in town. It's gritty realism rules. So if you want to do a quick short rest that takes a whole night, and then to really recoup all your abilities is a full week of rest.
You know why my face is like this, right?
I don't.
How does that work for Monk and Warlock?
You just sleep.
No, I mean, so you just don't do anything the rest of the day? Like when you're fighting and you've done your stuff, you're effectively not a class for the rest of the day.
I mean, you got Eldritch Blast, of course. But I think that's why it's gritty realism. Obviously, everyone has to be ready to go into a game like this. It's very much more Darkest Dungeon kind of style, where everyone's on the same page, and it's really... It's more similar to like the older Dungeon Crawl games.
In like a low magic campaign, I'd be like, okay. Because as a warlock, my 2 spells I get in a low magic campaign, that makes more sense.
You gotta make sure you're using these spells for the right purposes, pretty much.
But that adds so much stress. Maybe some people like that, but
that's why it's the gritty realism.
So I would play something, well, even a fighter, but that's just hit dice. They have some things that they get back on short rest. But for me, I think any games that I run, I would want to shorten the time. But is it realistic to be able to get such powerful things like spell slots back in 15 minutes and 20 minutes? Like that feels crazy, because I feel like you could find 20 minutes to do that anywhere, all the time.
I mean, I think the caveat of doing something like that is you have to set a maximum rest a day. You do like 3 short rests a day. And I mean, there already is a cap on long rest. You only get 1 long rest every 24 hours.
Because I mean, it already takes like 8 hours. I think short rests, what I've read commonly online is that when it was made, yada, 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 the idea was that the party would get 2 short rests per day, per adventuring day.
So they plan on getting a bunch of encounters to kick your ass.
Yeah. So when you think about like 3rd level, what does a sorcerer have? Around like 5 to 6 spell slots. And a warlock has, I think, 2 at that level. And if there's 2 short rests, that's 4. Gets them a 1, 2, and then you rest 2 more times with 6. So it's pretty on par.
Yeah, it's very interesting too, because it definitely depends on the type of games you're playing too. Because like we said earlier, with the amount of encounters, most people are not doing that.
Yeah,
a lot of people have kind of moved to the. I want to say critical role-esque style.
Well, that's what I've been thinking too.
But to have a couple encounters that are very story specific and have like a big boss fight at the end, and only maybe possibly if you're feeling crazy to hit this encounter cap when you're doing a long dungeon, like before like the end of a big campaign arc or something. So I think more people are moving to that idea. Not everybody though. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. Like every time I think I know what how most people are playing D&D, I'll see a post and I'm like, oh, and a lot of people are agreeing with this post that are way different. So it's definitely not everybody that's doing stuff like this. I know a lot of people still prefer combat heavy and stuff like that. So it's tough. It's a tough balance, I think. And that's why I don't think it's a straight DM problem. It's a straight WotC problem. It's a straight player problem. It seems like it's a kind of everything's pulling in different directions.
I feel like it stems from I don't know if this is the right term, but like lackadaisical design, where they're like, yeah, sure, Fireball should be busted. Yeah, sure, we'll make Warlocks and wait. They're like Little Mac in D&D. They just like they don't fit with the rest of everything, and they don't feel right to play in certain campaigns. And I would argue with the way that your campaigns are structured, playing Warlocks is at a pretty big disadvantage if you don't resource manage properly. I mean, you're pretty attentive and you adjust, but our adventuring day is almost exclusively RP.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that from like a negative standpoint. I mean it from the moment we start, we're in character the entire time. It's not, we're discussing things, we're sitting around, we're like offhandedly talking about the adventuring and kind of messing with each other. It's like fully for 4 hours, 5 hours, we're just
and then
RPing.
Like every 5 sessions, there's like 3 or 4 sessions in a row that's combat focused. You guys are moving along, and then it's a bunch of RP again.
It's really interesting because those are encounters too, though.
Yes.
So I'm considering like, do I use detect thoughts to get an edge on? This person's kind of suspicious. Oh, I just thinking of Mogus. Sorry. But it's like constantly throughout the damn thinking about these sorts of things and when my next rest might be. There's not a single session where I'm not thinking of when will I possibly be able to get a short rest.
In theory, you could take, you probably thought of this, but you can take short rests, during travel and stuff, which you guys have done, I believe, in the past.
Yeah.
So something I wanted to bring up that I don't know if you were aware of. And this is where it could also come from this philosophy. Is some modules will say where you can and cannot take short rests.
That makes sense. Well, cannot. It's interesting.
Well, so like the beginner's box will say, and they usually, I think they just kept it for the opening dungeon of Phandelver. But it says like you can take a short rest here and it'll be fine. And so I think DMs are getting into their head if this is the first time they're running games that okay, they short rest here, it's okay, but in other areas it might not be okay if they do a short rest. That makes sense. I got a excerpt from the Pathfinder 2e beginner box.
Pathfinder. I haven't gotten to that yet, but I have some thoughts.
Yeah, so we're crossing the boundary over this Pathfinder here. They say in their beginner box, in some adventures, the situation changes if the players take too long or rest too often. But this adventure and its encounter remain the same no matter how long the players take in exploring this dungeon. Any creatures the heroes defeat remain dead or destroyed. Any creatures they avoid remain in the same place, potentially posing a danger if the heroes pass to the area again later. I mean, it's a beginner box.
So that is this in the Abomination Vaults?
I don't believe so.
Okay, the Abomination Vault's the one that I have the most experience with. I'm currently going through it right now. We're near the end, and we have literally gone through and started making a meme like, well, let's put a pin in this, we'll come back to this later. And then when we're all like at 1 HP and all of our resources are gone, our GM goes, you guys want to take a long rest, go back to town? I'm like, sorry, what?
Sorry, what?
The basis is, hey, adventurers, go to this lighthouse area, old ruined castle, and investigate it. And we've been going there, trucking away, hurting stuff, and then it's like a mega dungeon. We just stop after we killed a few goblins or whatever creatures are there, and we go to town and we rest and we buy stuff and go back the next day. And everything is in the exact same spot, and there's no differences. It's not a big point.
I think a lot of adventure or dungeon crawls are, I think, similar designs.
I think it makes sense, especially if you're looking for that sort of thing. It's purely just the mechanics, bonk some stuff on the heads, you run in.
Just think of like Diablo style, where you teleport out and then come back into whatever level you're at.
I do kind of enjoy that. But it's also nice to feel the realness of a world. I think what I want to jump to now is like the way that short rests are. Is it a problem, and is the long rest proficiency bonus based abilities a solution that fixes things?
I don't know.
I like it. Yeah. I know Kenneth doesn't like it.
The moving to long rests?
Not necessarily moving to long rests. I just know he doesn't enjoy the proficiency bonus based abilities. I don't want to put words in his mouth. If he listens to this in the next like 5 weeks, whenever he catches up to it, he'll say something. I might ask him later today. But I know some people prefer short rest based abilities, and I think they're playing in games that are like Pathfinder, especially if it explicitly mentions things like that. And that,
well, not to cut you off, but I forgot that I have another from one of the, I don't want to say which one in case someone's going to play it at some point. Spoilers. But there's one of the final books of an adventure path for Pathfinder includes this one. They say the PCs don't have a lot of time to spare. Each encounter takes within a few hours of the preceding one, but the forces can push back the horde enough for the PCs to rest once during encounters and once before the final encounter.
Yeah.
So that's specifically saying, and it's Pathfinder again, specifically saying kind of the opposite of the beginner's box, that they got a little bit of time here to get moving on. I assume that's it comes to DM to say, you guys got to hurry this up, or leaving clues, NPCs saying stuff like that. Exactly,
leaving clues. I think it's really important to, in many aspects of telling a story and playing a game in the tabletop, as it were, the virtual tabletop, it's important to give context clues and hints of the surroundings, of the safety of things in all situations. They're entering a dungeon. What's the life like? What are you doing when they do perception checks? Is it valuable?
Yeah.
I think if you're in a game that uses rests, long rests, and short rests, they should be able to gather enough information. Sometimes, like not every single time, they should know yes or no, this is a good place to do a short rest, but they should be able to figure out, do a survival check and say, hey, GM, what is the situation like? I don't know. I think they should have a good idea, at least of that 40% of the time when they take a rest, they should feel confident.
Yeah, I don't think it should ever be off the table. I don't think DM should ever either outright say no, unless it literally is like super time consent, like the Pathfinder one I just read, where they said they have time for just maybe one rest.
Yeah. I think you could definitely do a couple of RP/NPC stuff that lets them know that.
But I think for the 90% of games and of the time, I think the DM should not be able to ever say no or punish them to an extent that makes it feel like, all right, we should never take a short rest in a dungeon again.
Yes.
Because I think there can and sometimes will be consequences, but not like bad consequences.
There were a few times where you would say something will happen. Like you made that statement. I'm like,
it could.
Sometimes things don't happen,
I know, but it could.
It could.
And that's why I think it's important to say could. It can happen.
Yeah.
To make them consider if this is good or bad. But like I said, I don't think it ever should come to the DM to just outright, you fail, you lose. This is now super hard because you decided to take a little bit of a rest.
Yeah, it's like you buff the bonfire at Dark Souls 2. You raise the difficulty of the area, that sort of thing. That's how I've felt sometimes being a warlock. It's like if I'm taking this, I'm harming everybody else, but giving myself resources. So that's a big gripe I have with warlocks, and it's only in these types of games. They work super well in dungeon crawls where you can take short rests all the time. That's where I feel like they're really powerful in the statements from Jeremy Crawford. Warlock spell slots are powerful. Like I would agree with that.
Yes.
But in games that run like Critical Role and how people are trending more towards that, where they're playing like Ryan does, and it's a lot of RP and story-based encounters, it can be tough for that fighter to get their second wind back, for them to get their action surge back, etc. So
now, do you think 5.5e
I have no idea.
Will change how monks and warlocks work?
They better. I don't know.
Like I believe, and maybe we can check it again. We come back to this episode in 2 years from now when the book finally releases. That I think those would be the two classes that would receive the most work. Ranger would probably be my third guess.
I feel if Jeremy Crawford has any say, I don't think he'll change Warlock much. I think it depends on if they get rid of short rests. And I don't think they will because of hit dice.
No, I think short rest will always be here. But I think it could be used just for occasional abilities and mainly just healing.
Warlock class and or change to Warlock, they can use hit die a certain number. Maybe it's 2 to get back a spell slot. Not rolling them, they just eat them.
It could be like the occultist from Darkest Dungeon, where you harm yourself and like are helping everybody else or helping yourself out.
Yeah,
like delving deeper into.
It's literally like reaching into my book and like expending off a piece of my energy or potential.
Well, we said this before that an idea that we read for, I think it was Wizards, that you take X amount of damage and you get a spell slot back.
Yeah, because that's all they do is they cast spells.
Yeah.
They do get a fuckload of them, but I love that sort of give and take. It's very much Bloodborne, you know, you add bullets and
I could see it if someone's smart enough abusing it in some way, but I think as an idea, it's very cool.
It's just a way for me to supplement short rests or like the Adventuring Day, because I feel like we don't use hit die enough.
No.
Makes sense. They're basically potions in your pocket. They're your Estus Flask.
Yeah, the most times I've ever seen my home game use a hit die is for dungeon crawl stuff. Like when you guys fought a beholder, you guys took a short rest during that area, and you guys had used up all your. That's the only time I've ever seen, like a few encounters later, if you rest later, they're like, so how many do we gain back now?
Half.
Like you take back half, and then
I think that's the important thing too with short rests is that's mostly what it offers up to the other classes of the game is just hit die.
Yes, for the most part.
So it's unique short rests are because they're not useful for everybody always.
And do you think it would helpful or make it more enticing if every class at least one thing they could receive from a short rest?
I don't want to homogenize everything, but it would be nice. It would give.
When you think about everything, everyone already did something from a long rest.
Yeah.
Why not given a short rest?
I mean, isn't that what hit dice are? What if they're not damaged? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's really hard to convince. And then you end up being the monk or warlock that's just like Eldritch Blast Machine. And it's so interesting because Warlock's highest level stuff is get back all your spell slots. That's their level 20 ability. So that's like the thesis of they should not be able to rest too often and get their things back. I don't want to turn this into the Warlock podcast, but hey, you know, it is what affects it. We
never did a Warlock episode.
We have stopped doing it. I think we should
go back to the classes.
Bring it back at some point.
I mean, we might as well since the Multiverse hasn't come out for a while, which I guess we should have a section on here at the end at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I was going to say about the short rest stuff.
I don't know. I think the big things I wanted to run through is the time, if shortening them is a realistic option.
I think that could be helpful, especially for a home game. But I think that's probably why Matthew Mercer does it, because he's like, I know how my players get with my type of game. Let's just make the rest quicker, because I don't want them to feel like that they're gimped, that they can't do their stuff.
Yeah. So it's the time-based thing. It's he's more short rests matter.
Like I'll homebrew lore and stuff all day. I'm not a mechanic guy. I've never gotten into besides doing some monster stuff and a little bit of items. So I'm probably not the guy to be asking about rests or in classes and whatnot.
I mean, I feel like shortening the time doesn't affect too much. It doesn't touch too many things.
Yeah, that's fine, I think.
So if you're really wanting to help out those short rest-based classes in your game, shortening the time might make it better.
At least make your players feel better.
Or explicitly saying, I'm not going to kill you.
Yes, I think it's okay to reach around the curtain every so often and say things like that. And say, it's okay. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Or on the flip side, reminding your players, hey, you can take a long rest here. You guys want to take a short rest? You look pretty beat up. Like I've even had NPCs sometimes say, "You guys, Jesus, you look pretty rough."
Oh yeah,
probably go take a rest.
See, that's a really clear indicator. Another clear indicator will be, and I think every DM should include this in their session 0, is what is a short rest?
Yeah.
And are they safe in my world? I guess I don't know. I think this might end up being one of our shorter episodes. It's kind of curtailing all of it. It's about everything I had thoughts regarding the short rest.
Yeah, we covered everything I was ranting about. I did a little look over the D&D stuff, they haven't really talked about rests as much as the Pathfinder one did a few times. I just did like a control F for rest and try to find what I could see.
Well, Pathfinder's interesting because you don't, like, you can do medicine checks and heal yourself anytime.
Yeah.
Except they're just
you can
hard
try.
if you don't have. You can try. Yeah.
You can certainly try. That's the favorite DM phrase. You can try.
You can try. The ability risky surgeries come in handy a lot.
That's why I think all DMs that say you can't do something here, they just need to change that to you can try.
I think it's fine to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
There's definitely some things.
Yes, definitely. I maybe don't take that to that extent for me. But I mean like people that refuse people to take rests and whatnot. I think it's better to say, if you know as a DM, like maybe you're playing in this this final Pathfinder adventure that said you can only take one rest or something, you say, yeah, you can try to take a rest. You can give it a shot. Or if you're in a very deep, dark, scary dungeon and you can hear creatures moving around, and you say, sure, you can barricade the door and try to take a rest. And then maybe there's going to be an encounter there. And then you can get your full rest.
I mean, maybe you're in a really weird world, like how the opposite of at least Dark Souls 1, where you have humanity, and the longer you're alive, the longer you go without resting, the more dangerous things, like people can evade you. Maybe reverse it, like literally have notes in your section, like if they're in the Shadowfell, if you take 3 rests, X will happen, and it's like different tiers of things, which can set it like there's interesting ways you play with
like
it.
the Shadowfell emotion creatures, like the lost, the hungry, that type of stuff. You take the tired, you take a lot of rest, so you got the tired guy, the fatigue guy coming after you.
There's things you can do if you really want to fuck up your warlock, And they're fine. Warlocks taking short rest, they're getting back their patron powers. Of course, weird stuff's gonna happen. I don't know. But the biggest thing, the biggest indicator that they are thinking about this is the proficiency bonus stuff.
Yes.
So that's really, I think, what prompted this. You said in the beginning, the changes they're bringing about. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to change short rest. I don't know if they're going to remove them.
We could only hypothesize, which brings us, I guess, to the section where we say, at least I say, I'm sure Brax is on the same page, but I'm going to speak for him, on the same page about how Monster the Multiverse is coming out in a week if you pay $150.
Look, you will get it. You get the book.
Yeah, you get the full box set of Tasha's, Sanithar's, and this new fancy book, Monster the Multiverse, with a cool cover on it, exclusive cover. And then in March is when it comes out.
That was May.
Else. Sorry, let me check.
I think you've mentioned May a couple of times. It better if it's in March. This makes a lot more sense. May is like there's no reason.
They said it's because of they got held up in the supply chain.
I mean,
stuff,
that makes sense.
Does it make sense
if it's an entirely different cover? Yeah,
it comes out May 17th.
The situations I can imagine now are supply chain guys. Hey, okay, we need the one cover book.
But
we need the other
doesn't
cover book.
excuse it not coming out of D&D Beyond, which, to be fair, they are unaffiliated. D&D Beyond is not a WotC thing, but I mean they're practically working together at this point.
I don't know.
It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know.
To me, it screams, "Hey, we want $150 from you if you want the book now."
Is it still the case that the sum of its parts is worth less than the total price?
So I pointed this out to Braxton earlier, but so if you were to buy Mordenkainen Presents Monster Multiverse in its completed edition, whenever it comes out in May, either on D&D Beyond or physical copy, it is $29.99. Now, I'm sure all you math whizzes at home are already thinking, okay, the box set is $150, okay?
So each book is $50.
That's not the case. If Monster the Multiverse is $30 and the other books are already $50, that means it just doesn't add up.
Is it the alt colors worth $20? Alt covers worth $20? Is there
I think
something
alt
extra?
covers, Kenneth would be the guy to ask because he usually buys the alt cover. I think it's at most $10 more.
I mean, that makes it more acceptable, but that's just really weird. I hope, if you can... Is this the physical copy on D&D Beyond? Is this what you're looking at?
This is the pre-order for Mordenkainen. It's not the physical, but it's on D&D Beyond.
Okay.
But everything you'd see here for the physical is
But
the same.
you cannot get that bundle on D&D Beyond.
No, it's only on Amazon or your local game store, or I think that's probably on their website too. I don't understand it.
And the funny thing is, I saw tweets. Mordenkainen is not the giant claw creature in the back. He is the wizard.
That is an astral dreadnought.
Yeah, he will pinch your booty.
Love the
hole.
astral dreadnought.
I don't know. This is definitely the biggest head scratcher that I've seen from WotC so far.
I assume, and I saw the people hypothesizing, this means that this is going to be considered one of their bigger releases of this year then, because they usually release about 5 books a year, and since this is taking up the May slot, that'll probably be their May book for the year.
Do they usually have a release in January? So are they taking up releases with this thing twice?
I want to say I gotta check. When did Ravenloft come out? Was that January?
No, it wasn't a year ago.
Ravenloft.
Don't freak me out like that. I feel like that was in fall of last year.
Actually, it'd be faster if I just look up all the D&D books. Let me get them up here.
I don't know. So I feel like we already know everything that's going to be in this, and I agree that it.
If you want to know, you can check out our leak video that just
it affects a very large amount of 5e. So I would understand it taking the May slot and being one of their largest releases. Because of that, it affects so much surface area of the game rather than it just being a location or a story or an adventure. I understand, but it still feels like such minor adjustments to everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess this is a way for them to make money. Release the same stuff, just errata.
I was watching Monkey DM earlier today, and he was talking about how 5e is still one of the best tabletop games for storytelling.
True, I would agree.
And I agree with him, but then I think about the mechanics behind it, and it's like, why would you say that about a system? The only reason is for its mechanics lean well into storytelling, right?
Right.
Like that's what somebody says when they say that. But what does it have for that? Is it just the lack of mechanics that brings it?
I think the ease to get into it, yeah.
So it doesn't really lean itself well to storytelling. It just doesn't have enough, so storytelling can't take the forefront.
I maybe, yeah. I think also it's because it's so, I don't know, rules light, that it gives more credence to DMs to do DM magic stuff and change things. And like, this happens because we're doing a cinematic event. And, so this isn't an item or a ability in the game. It's just something that's...
It's non-restrictive.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, well, performance checks and charisma checks and whatnot aren't... Like, that's not what he's talking about. So I don't know.
There's not normally a January release, though.
Okay.
The rules box comes out in January. There is normally a May release. Salt March came out in May.
Why do they have these release periods? Just shit stuff out.
That'd be nice. The Stranger Things came out in May.
Stranger Things have come out of WotC.
Where's how have I missed Ravenloft? Oh, here we go. It came out in May. So that was the May release.
That feels right.
So this will be the May release for this quarter.
I didn't like Ravenloft, and I guess I won't like this either. So maybe I'm not a fan of the May release period. I don't know. And
we do have the Critical Role book coming out. That's even later too now. I think that got delayed further.
Good.
I think that's in March. That might be the one I'm thinking about coming out.
I'm excited for it because it's not fully WotC. Like, all of the not fully WotC books have been great. Yeah,
I'd love to. It comes out in March. Yeah, I'd love to get James Hayek, Matthew Mercer, the guys that were, even Chris Perkins is working on it, to specifically James Hayek or Matthew Mercer, pull them aside someday and be like, hey, do you guys make more money when you work with WotC or when you release your own book? I would love them to do what Matt Colville's doing. Just start releasing their own stuff. Because I like what they're doing. Their philosophy is better than what WotC does.
Yeah. I don't know. I had an opinion or a thing to say. Okay. For Monsters of the Multiverse, we haven't gotten the full book. Do you even see yourself using it, like, at all? No. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll look at it, and I'm going to ask, players that are using races from it, like, hey, would you rather, do you want to use this race? Or especially if we're playing a game and someone's playing a race from that book, when it comes out, say, hey, you want to check this out? And do you prefer that race? 9 times out of 10, it'll probably be better. So I switch to it, but I'm not going to I don't think it's enough for me to, granted, it's only $30, but I don't think it's enough for me to be like, yeah, I'd rather have this book than the books already have the stuff in it. So from what I've seen so far, there's not too much change. Yeah. As a player on D&D Beyond, I think it might be worthwhile to get it, but again, I'm questioning how they're going to implement. I forgot to tell you, they have said the D&D Beyond, I've talked about, no, it is a completely separate material. Completely separate. So there will be for example, this is the human's not in there, but for example, if there was a new human in there, it'd be Human Player's Handbook, Human
Monsters of the Multiverse. So it's a whole completely separate.
We're getting into like 3.5e level of shit now, where there's like a billion different resources and books for people to look at.
D&D Beyond is not affiliated or doesn't work with.
This is not a decision WotC would make.
There is still some belief, we told us before, that WotC might be making their own VTT, which would be...
VTT is fine. I use D&D Beyond more as a virtual library.
Do you think if WotC made their own equivalent of D&D Beyond, they would just pull the plug from D&D Beyond and you can no longer have your books you already paid for?
I think they could make that decision. I don't know if it's what will happen.
It's like what Steam could do in theory, just take all your games from you and never let you play them again.
Well, here's your issue is you've got people that had D&D Beyond and they have their own opinions. Do they want to be absorbed into WotC? Has an offer gone on the table before for like, hey, come join us?
That's kind of interesting to think about. That they're still independent from each other.
And you've got above VTT as well, which I constantly use with...
Which is an extension on top.
It's just an extension on top of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they know they'd make too many people upset having to buy a new library of things digitally.
Maybe they do like a whole, what Hitman did for Epic Games. Because I don't know if you knew this one. Hitman 3 release on Epic Games. You could, if you bought the other Hitman games, you could play all of the other levels in Hitman 3. But the problem is it was an Epic exclusive. So if you bought them on Steam, you couldn't play them. Eventually, they made a way to connect your accounts and you could play them all together. But until people were angry enough.
This is like thousands of dollars, though.
Yeah.
Maybe they say, hey, connect your account. If you own them on here, you own them. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think there's the obvious business choice of fuck it. We don't care about PR, good PR. We already have enough just PR in general and outreach that we don't need to worry about that and just reap the rewards from having an entirely new library and forcing people to buy it.
I don't know.
I am very interested to see what happens.
Yeah. I want to see what other books are going to come out this year. Some people are thinking, we haven't had the Planescape or Spelljammer book. So there's going to be something with that. I feel like those races. I don't know.
What are the releases? What other windows are there for releases?
We got September.
Okay.
April sometimes has a release. October definitely. This year might have been a little different because there were like three there was like October, November, and December, probably because of COVID. But there's definitely one in October, some in November. That's about it.
Okay.
So there's probably at least maybe 3 or 4 unannounced books. Well, actually, the Critical Role one's probably one of them. At least I'd say probably 3 unannounced books.
It's so silly because all it's going to take to make me happy is just a Warlock class that does something. Because they're half-caster, you can't just give them niche abilities. You can't just do it. But
you can. They will. They have.
I don't know, man. I don't know. If you're interested in talking with us about this, you can absolutely do. Oh, wait a minute.
My last thing I want to say before we completely close out, I don't have to cut you out, Braxton. I do want to shout out, not that they need the assistance, not that they need any sort of help at all, but Tome of Beasts 3, which kind of weird to me because they've got Tome of Beasts 1, Creature Codex, Tome of Beasts 2, and now Tome of Beasts 3. I feel like there should be a Creature Codex 2, but hey, it's besides the point. From Kobold Press, just got released on Kickstarter. They got 30 days to go or something like that, and they've already gotten to they asked for 50,000, they're already past 200,000. So they've smashed all their stretch goals already, and now they got to make more. So they don't need the help, but I do just want to say that Kobold Press always makes incredible content. Go pick it up. Go support them. You can get the PDF for like $29 or the full hardcover for $59. Plus the layers that they have in there where they use the monsters in like a layer. Can I give you an example? Really cool.
Another grid doesn't need help, but if you're interested, the Vox Machina trailers have been coming out for that.
Oh yeah, that comes out next week, I think.
Damn. How many people do you think are going to watch that as their first experience of Critical Role?
I think
it's different voice actors, isn't it?
No, I'm pretty sure they're voicing their characters, but Matthew Mercer's obviously not voicing every other NPC, which I thought would be hilarious. But they got some big names. I don't know if you saw. They got like David Tennant in there. They got I can't remember Stephanie Beatrice. I want to say.
This is the biggest D&D media release I think of all time.
Bigger than the D&D movie, which was apparently not big.
Did it come out?
No, I meant the one that came in like 1990.
Isn't there rumors of another one?
There's
okay,
but I think it's gonna get a lot of new people into it for sure, and be like, what is, or maybe hell, they might just think it's a cool anime or a fantasy show, and then find out what it is actually.
I was just thinking about it. I'm like, how many people would shit on me if I watched that first before actually watching the live play?
I think
people would shit on me.
I think diehards would, but I think I think like you said, a lot of people are going to get into this as their first experience, and I think people are going to need to be respectful about that because they're going to be covering some of everyone's favorites. That's why they're covering those arcs.
And they've had to. I wonder how much they're going to change and how much additional lines they'll be adding.
Yeah, I don't know, because when you think about it, the stuff they're covering took weeks and like months of 4-hour sessions
and fights.
They're going to cover in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, fights are going to be really changed to make them entertaining.
Or do you think, oh man, crazy idea. What if they do the fights the exact same with the same abilities, the same way they did them, but obviously it's just without time slowing. It's just like 6 seconds.
Yeah,
all these abilities.
That's actually very true. I mean, I saw a moment in the trailer.
Cool.
There's cool. The barbarian has a big barrel of ale, and then one of the characters, it's the one that Jamie really loves. I don't remember her name. Sorry, I haven't watched a lot of Critical Role. But she proclaims to the barbarian to throw it, and he's like, "I just got this," and her arrows light on fire, and he's like, "Oh," and he throws it and explodes it. I'm like, that's a really cool moment that probably accurately happened in the game.
I think it's gonna get a lot of people into it, and I think again, this is why 5th edition is probably built the way it is. It's super easy and why they've made it more easy to get into. It's the biggest D&D's ever been.
If you want to be crazy powerful, just play a class that has Fireball. There you go. If you want to have a lot of flavor but not super crazy powerful, play Warlock.
It is. You do have to get Amazon Prime. So a lot of people are upset about that.
Yes.
So you have to get
Amazon will own the world.
Even if you backed it, you have to get a Prime account to be able to watch it.
But you know what? You don't have to get a Prime account to watch or read.
The Dungeon Crawl.
The Dungeon Crawl. No, not yet. Hold on. We do have social media at Dungeon Crawl Pod. I believe Ryan's been a little bit more active on it lately.
Posted some cool stuff. Go over there and retweet it.
Sometimes I'll see the notification open on and I'm on the Dungeon Crawl account and I like and retweet. I'm like, wait a minute.
I don't know. I saw that.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. That's what you do. But yeah, it's at Dungeon Crawl Pod both on Twitter and Instagram. I don't know if we'll use Instagram too much, even though it's the biggest social media platform.
I'd say we'll probably start using it once we start the live play. We're in person. We'll take some pictures of us, get set up.
I have a couple friends that might do editing for free for us.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. So we also have a Discord. If you're interested in jumping into that, there's a link tree in the description. We have quite a few games that run off and on, some Pathfinder stuff, some like homebrew D&D worlds like Zelda. We run off of a bunch of different tabletops, bunch of different systems. So we're looking for a group of people that are open to trying your homebrew creations. We had a viewer from one of my streams come in and say, I played with people that don't like homebrew stuff and they won't let me test my things.
Gross.
I'm like, yo, get in our channel and let's hang out with us. Jump in and we'll get chatting with you. Maybe we'll have some
we've
games.
been streaming our home game. If you're interested in watching, you're jumping and literally no idea what's going on. But if you're curious to see how we play before we start the live play, where you actually know what's going on, then
if you're interested in jumping to the end of 2-3 year campaigns. There's that. The Zelda one
and you
stream.
get to see some copyright music, which you won't be able to see in the live
jam
play.
out to that. Outside of that, we do have a Patreon as well, which we had some lovely subscribers, patrons jumping in and out. Thank you very much always for the support there. If you do feel like helping us, it will allow me to finally glue the panels on the wall. I don't know. There's echo in here. There's echo. I know there's echo. I'm sorry. We still sound pretty okay.
We sound very good.
But thank you for the support.
I
just looked at him.
Yeah, I was going to think of something cool, but I kind of think, what are you going to do for short rest? You take a rest and someone pops into your brain and tells you to subscribe or rate us 5 stars on iTunes.
You're taking your short rest, you listen to podcasts on your short rest, you might as well hit that button. There you go.
Better than I was going to.
There you go.
Yeah, so you're pulling out your... They don't have iPhones in D&D.
They could. High fantasy. Hey, if they have a phone in olden days, Pokemon Legends Arceus,
you pick out your sending stone. You got a sending stone out there or something in your ear, and someone is broadcasting us to you, the Dungeon Crawl. So make sure you rate us 5 stars on
5 stars.
Podcast. And write a little. I do want to say thank you to all the new ratings that I've seen on the iTunes, on the Apple Podcasts, and
200.
We're over 200 subscribers on YouTube. 207, I want to say right now. I know I've said a number, so I'm just gonna subscribe now. But thank you, all of you, for coming in, and we're getting some cool numbers. More people are popping in, commenting, and hopping in our Discord. So we really appreciate it.
Also, I will say again, there's only 2 episodes that are below 100 listens on our podcast. Do you know what they are off the top of your head? It's the 2019 wrapped episode, basically 2019 year in review.
How come we haven't just gone to go listen to it?
I have tried. It doesn't. And it's the Kickstarter one. They're pretty far down. It's like halfway through. If you feel like...
I know it's called Kickstart Your Life.
Kickstart Your Life and something 2019. Those 2. Everything else is at 200, 300 listens. And I'm like...
Were they pissed for? I mean, it was in the height of COVID. So.
Well, I mean, it was the height of COVID. And they were a little I think I was in a different spot. I don't know. not really SEO stuff. Yeah, who's looking up 2019 stuff in 2022?
Now we've been popping off lately. So I want to thank you all for coming in. I don't know what we're going to be covering next week, because I was all excited to do Monsters of the Multiverse. Maybe I'll find a copy of it somewhere that I can quickly buy and get it up to us, but I don't know if that'll be possible. So if not, then maybe we'll do our next class episode that we've been just talking about a second ago, or something else. Who knows?
I don't know. But as always, he's been Ryan.
He's been practicing with Dungeon Crawl. If you have an idea, if you want us to cover, comment below.
And we'll be starting live play soon-ish, maybe.
Yes. And sorry we're a day late. But
yeah. I was feeling sick. Yeah, I ate some bad food yesterday. Thank you. Love you.
Live play soon. So
thanks for calling with us.
If you haven't subscribed already to the live play Dungeon Chronicles, go over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, same places where you listen to us already. Just type in the Dungeon Chronicles.
Should be in the link tree below as well.
Listen to the old stuff if you're interested. If not, then don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
YouTube will be here, so don't worry about it. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.